Hey guys, welcome back to the studio. Today we're heading to my dad's house to make some mints. Now this is a family recipe from my great-grandma, Grandma Holmes, and we make it every winter because, you know, it has to be cold outside, your room has to be cold, so we always make it in kind of the Christmas time when we all get together. Big tradition, and it's Christmas time now, so we're gonna go head to my dad's house and make some mints. Here's the basics of what you're gonna need to make fondant centers. Start with a heavy bottom pot with the heat off now. And you're going to add in a quarter cup of water, 8 cups of sifted sugar. Make sure you sift it. That's important. 1.5 cups of heavy cream. Now this is a half cup, so there's 3 of those. 1 cup of whole milk. Not 2%, not half, nothing. It's whole milk. And 1/3 cup light corn syrup. That's it right there. Now we're going to top that off with 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to turn the burner on to medium-low, just barely above low. Slowly, I mean slowly, stir that together and scrape the bottom as you do. Now everything in this recipe is very specific. If I say stir with a wooden spoon, you had better use wood, okay? Don't use plastic or metal or rubber, you use wood. If the recipe calls for butter, you better not use margarine. Okay, back to stirring. You're going to need to slowly stir this constantly for 20 minutes. Your goal is to completely dissolve every single sugar granule in that pot because
a single grain of sugar could ruin the whole batch.
We stir it slowly so the mixture doesn't slosh on the sides and a granule gets missed because, you know.
A single grain of sugar could ruin the whole batch.
After about 7 minutes of stirring, you can take a cold half stick of butter and run it along the edge to wash down the sides. As you do this, have someone else thoroughly wash your spoon off in the sink because
a single grain of sugar could ruin the whole batch.
Continue to stir for another 5 minutes and then check your progress. Take the spoon out and carefully wipe your finger across the sugar. Now, it will be hot, but it's not going to burn you. Probably. Roll that sugar between your fingers and check how dissolved the sugar is. If you feel any grit, that means it's not ready. Do another wipe down with butter and then toss that whole thing into the pot and let it melt. Once the butter is all melted, then check it again with your finger. If you start to see bubbles forming, aka boiling, your heat is too high. So you gotta watch that carefully. Once you're satisfied that all the sugar is dissolved, place a thermometer in the mix and then turn that heat on to high. Let it boil until it reaches 229, 232 degrees, depending on elevation. This particular batch, I think it was like 232, and we should have done more like 231, maybe 230, because as you'll see, we cooked it just a little bit too hot, but that's okay. Once the temp is reached, kill that heat and pour it onto a marble or granite slab that has been coated with butter. Now you're going to slowly pour that into the middle of the slab, allowing those edges to cool so it doesn't run off. Be careful with this stuff. It's pretty hot. And do not scrape the bowl out. Don't scrape it down, don't wash it out. No, just pour what you can out and then that's it. Because
a single grain of sugar could ruin the whole batch.
Now you can flick a little bit of ice water on the sugar to help it cool down. But once the sugar cools enough to do this, we can start turning that fondant. Now we're going to start by folding the edges into the middle with some putty knives. Then once you have it all together, lift the sides together and slap them down into the middle. This is a lot like pulling taffy, folding and pulling the sugar to incorporate air. Keep doing this until the sugar turns. When it starts to thicken, you can change your technique to a folding action like this. And then all of a sudden it'll turn like that. If your fondant is too hard like this batch turned out to be, at this point you can add a small amount of butter to soften it. Use softened butter for this step and just work that in until all the chunks are gone. Now at this point you can add your colorant and flavoring. This batch is going to be green for mint, the traditional way. The yellow one is lemon, but I do not recommend that. It did not turn out well. And red is raspberry. That one was pretty good. Once you have that mixed together, chill it in the fridge for a bit, roll it out into a log over a well-dusted surface with some powdered sugar. Cut that into portions and roll out into thick circles. Do this quickly because the heat from your hand will soften the fondant and make it sticky. Use powdered sugar on your hands to prevent it from sticking. Now it's time to coat them all with chocolate. Do not use chocolate chips for this step or candy melts. Do yourself a favor and go buy some quality chocolate. For this batch, we're going to mix 2 to 3 ratio of darkened milk. It's not exact. Go ahead and melt that down with your preferred method until it reaches 90 degrees. Don't overheat your chocolate or you're going to lose your temper. Throw a fondant center into the chocolate. Wiggle your fingers around a bit to get off the excess and to make sure that the fondant's completely coated. Scrape the back of your hand off on the rim of the bowl and then place that onto some parchment paper. Use your middle finger to smooth out the top a little bit, and with a little extra chocolate on your finger, you can denote the flavor with a symbol. Traditionally, we always do mint, so it's almost always a capital M. Wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Scrape your thumb, scrape the bowl. Place, clean, and M. It does take quite a bit of practice, but after, 1,000 of these, you'll get the hang of it. And another thing.
A single grain of sugar could ruin the whole batch.